Hi, I'm Anthony from Sydney Backyard Veggies. Today I'm going to take you onto a tour through my veggie patch just to show you where I'm at for the month of May. And I'll just go through a few things that I'm doing this month and what I'm looking at planning to do as we move into late autumn, early winter. So come and join me, and I hope you enjoy seeing the progress in my patch. So here I am at my main bed. The bed here it comes in two sections. You've got the back part, which is separated by a piece of timber, which was the original bed that was developed, say 5-6 years ago. And then I've got the newer part of the bed, which was part of an extension that I did. So in the front part of my main bed, I've just planted my second round of sugar snap peas. These were planted 4 days ago. So these were raised from seedlings. This variety is called sugar snap climbing peas. It's funny enough, that's straight out their name. These are the Yates varieties, and they have a tendency to grow to about 2 meters in height and are very productive. So this is my second crop. I'm expecting these to be producing in late August. So far so good. They've been in the ground for a few days now and they've settled in. I will need to do some trellising for them over the next week or so. So next to the peas, I've got my third round of cauliflower. I've planted 12 at the moment in this spot, and these again were planted 2 days ago, but these have replaced what I had previously, which was tomatoes. I had late season tomatoes growing in this spot, and they've since been removed, and I've gone and planted my third round of cauliflowers. What I try to do with every single one of my vegetable plantings is I try to interplant with a faster growing crop. So at the moment I've gone and interplanted with pak choy. These were planted yesterday. They're looking a bit worse for wear, but they'll come good and they'll be ready to harvest in about 4 weeks. Here is my fourth round of broccoli. I've got 4 rows of 6 plants. So I've got 24 plants in this batch. These plants were planted just under a month ago, and they've been in the warmer weather. They tend to grow quite fast. They're ready now at the moment to be applied with their first side dressing of nitrogen fertilizer, a blood and bone or a chook manure pellet. And then what I'll be doing is, if I come closer, I will be hilling the soil across to give them a bit of extra support. As they get longer, they tend to be a bit leggy, and it just gives them a bit of extra support when there's a bit of wind around. So I've done this in a previous video, which I will post a link to up here, but the intent is that in the next few days I'll do the hilling. This will deal with the weeds and will add that additional extra nitrogen to the patch. And as we are in early autumn, I still have some of my summer crops showing. This is my summer planting of jalapenos. Look, they've been doing great. Like, I had a bit of trouble with them mid-season with the fruit flies that came through and demolished most of the crop, but if I bring you close, you can see that there's still a lot of fruit in the plants. Some nice big ones just sitting there. The idea is here at the moment is I will be removing these this weekend. It's starting to get a bit too cold here in Sydney to keep these around, so I'll remove these and I will be looking at planting some more winter or cool season crops in this spot. And to the left of the jalapenos, I've got my second planting of broccolis. These were planted 2 weeks before the third, and as you can see, these have been healed and side dressing has been applied, and they're looking quite good. There's very little, as the weather gets cooler, the insect pressure really does drop off. I have been treating these with homemade white oil to keep the cabbage moths at bay, and it seems to have been working quite well. I'm expecting the first heads, and if I come have a look, there are only heads showing. I am expecting that these will be ready to harvest in about 4 weeks. So I try to get a planting of broccoli in every 4 weeks, just to keep succession planting all the way through winter. So I will be starting new seedlings now, which will be replacing these plants when they're ready to be harvested. So here I am over at the second half of my main bed, and I'm here in front of my Brussels sprouts patch. The second part of his bed is mostly brassicas. I've got Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, and cabbages planted out in this section. I also do have some older summer veggies that haven't pulled out yet. They're coming to the end of their season, so there'll be more space for future veggies. But I'll walk you through these crops now. So here I am at my first part of my broccoli crop. I have 5 plants in this location. These plants were planted in early Feb. They actually been doing quite well. This is the first year I've planted Brussels sprouts, and it's a bit of a trial and error for me trying to learn about the best ways to grow these plants. So far so good. I've made sure that I've given them a really good constant supply of nitrogen to make sure they grow well, and also make sure they're being watered well. Look, they've grown. They've put on a lot of size in the heat, and if I come closer, you can see that they've got what looks like the start of little buds forming on the plants for the Brussels sprouts. So I'm just keeping an eye on, I've just been keeping an eye on pests. Aphids are the big ones that have been worrying me. So far, there doesn't seem to be any aphid damage on the plants. And as I move to the left, this is my second crop of cauliflower planted here. This here was an old Wombok, old Chinese cabbage patch that got harvested about a month ago, and I've gone and planted my second round of broccolis here. They're again doing quite well. I've just been healed today and I've had their first side dress of nitrogen. So just again working through those. I've come across to here. This is my main cabbage patch. I've just started harvesting these. I actually harvested 3 heads over the weekend. They look really good. I decided to take a punt and plant these out early. I planted these out essentially in February, and in Sydney we had a really strong heat wave in early March. They did struggle a while in the heat, but just the warmer soils really helped them along. Now I've started to pick them progressively. I'm looking at ones like this, which should be ready to harvest soon. I might be able to get a bit more of size into it, but generally speaking, I'm trying to harvest. I've got 20 heads of broccoli, of cabbage here. I'm looking at trying to harvest 2 or 3 a week so I can work through them. And next to the cabbages, these are my cauliflower. This is my first cauliflower planting. Heads have just started forming on these plants, and if I come and bring you closely, you can see there are a few heads showing. Probably not, this one's probably not the best one, but there are a few, and I might bring you across to show you. So there's a few heads shown here at the moment, and there you go. That's a broccoli. That is looking really good. I would say I am ready to harvest by the weekend. So in 5 days' time, this would be the first one I would harvest. But as you can see, I do have a fair few growing. There's another one there. So all in all, I've got about 18 heads of broccoli in this spot, and just about to look at harvesting them this week. Just back to the start of the second bed, if you could notice, there is actually a inherent dividing line between this bed. This bed is 7 meters long by close to 8 meters wide, and the mango tree that's under the net actually separates the plot into two areas. You've got the front section and then the back section. And at the back section, I have planted eggplant. Was planted September, and I've been harvesting well from these. But now they're coming to the end of the season. There's still a lot of crop on them, and there's still a lot of flowers showing, but it's starting to get a bit cold for them. I'm going to give them another harvest for about a week or so, and then they'll be out, and I'll be looking at planting potentially broad beans in this patch. And as I move across, I have my first planting of sugar snap peas. Now these are the same variety as the second planting that I had in the front section of the main bed. These are now in about 1.5 meters high. They've just started flowering, but I expect them to grow as tall as the posts that you've got right there. I'm expecting big things out of this crop, and yeah, really looking forward to starting to eat in a few sugar snap peas. So if you can just see, they've started to flower, but have actually started to form a couple of small pods. So there's actually a few more ready to be harvested. And in front of that bed, I've got my second planting of wombok, or Chinese cabbage. Again, these were planted 4 weeks ago, and they're doing quite well. They're sitting in the shade of the mango tree, but they'll come along, they'll come through. And okay, so I'm now over at my north-facing side of my garden. Here I get full sun all year round, summer and winter. And in winter, as the temperatures drop, I tend to find this is the best location for me to grow my leafy greens. So my rocket, my lettuce, my coriander, they seem to do a lot better in the full sun. And these, because they're small, well-defined beds, it's easier for me to control and monitor their growth and actually harvest the crop. So I'm going to walk through and just show you what I'm growing in the north-facing side of my bed at the moment. In the first section of the bed, I have my first planting of cos lettuce for the season. I've got 20 plants planted here. These were planted out about two to 3 weeks ago. They're doing great. They're looking slightly, if I could say, they're looking slightly leggy. They may have potentially started bolting, but that's the nature of the beast when you come to plant cos lettuce. They're actually quite temperamental. I may need to replant these, but at this stage I am seeing how they go over the next 2 weeks or so, and then maybe potentially replace them if I need to. Coming across, I have my silver beet now. Silver beet's doing great. I planted these early. I planted these in February. Look, they're doing okay. I've got a decent number of leaves growing, but I am struggling, and I'll bring you closer to here, with a bacterial infection on these plants, which I am trying to treat with copper oxychloride. But at the moment, it's a losing battle on my end. We had quite humid weather here in Sydney, and it has been promoting this bacterial infection, so I might have lost the whole crop. So I'm thinking of potentially ripping these out and starting again, but we'll see how they go next month. Coming across, this is my first coriander planting for the season. Again, these are doing amazing, and they're loving the warmth, the late season warmth that we've been having. And then coming across, here is my first round of rocket, or as it's being called, arugula. I did a first harvest of these today. Harvested the whole plot. I do hand harvest my my plants, just to make sure I don't destroy any of the growing tips on the plants. I get a harvest off these once every 2 weeks. These will get a weekly liquid nitrogen feed, because it does really help promote that leafy growth that you're looking for in rocket. And it's a perfect time to grow them now in winter, in late autumn, winter. As the temperature warms, you tend to get a lot of white blister showing up on the leaves, and you end up losing most of the crop to that bacteria. And then here I've got my first planting of kohlrabi. Again, I've got about 20 plants here, and again they're starting to show promise of a harvest, and I would say this harvest will be ready in 3 weeks. This variety is called Cindy. One thing I can't grow, or I do struggle to grow, is English spinach. I gave it another go this year, and the germination was quite patchy, but I look like I've got a decent patch here. Hopefully I will get a second planting done soon, but they look okay. They've got some nice new leaves that I can start harvesting now. But at this stage, I'm just monitoring them, making sure they're well watered and fertilized. So now I'm at my south-facing side of my garden, and here I have garden beds all the way along the fence line here, all the way to the main bed at the end. In winter, it's actually quite difficult to plant in this section, simply because I do have the fence shadowing over the bed. So I tend to grow crops here that tend to get a bit of height to them. So this year I'm trying to grow peas, climbing peas, and the like, to see if I can get them to grow above the shadow of the fence. But traditionally, every year I have grown my broad bean crop here, and it's actually worked quite well for me. I have been a bit slow in my gardening this year, and the majority of the beds have been overtaken with weeds, but that's jobs for me. That's a continuous list of jobs for me to do in this patch. So just give you a walkthrough of what I've grown here at the moment. So at my south-facing beds, the most thing I've done here is actually just planted this first section. These are late season beans that I planted in March. I did get a good harvest off them, but they're going out this weekend. They're not going to be producing anymore. It's too late in the season. But as I do come across, I have planted my first round of green feast shelling peas in this location. And as you can see, they've just started to flower and actually looking quite good. I do have a tendency to get problems with chickweed growing in between them, so I am having to stay on top of them, but they are just, as you can see, they're just starting to flower, which is great. I do need to keep looking at providing more trellising to the plants, but yeah, I'm still staying on top of them, and they're doing pretty well. I have interplanted between them some leftover bok seedlings that I had left over. They are doing well. They're still getting a bit of sun here, but as the days get shorter, they will be less and less light for them to grow. So I'll see. This is more of an experiment for me for this year, but we'll see how they go. As I come across, I do have residual plants. This is my fig tree that's just gone dormant. It did have a late flush of fruit for some reason, but it's ready to be, it's gone into dormancy at the moment, so it won't be until spring until I see new leaves open up. Here, I'm quite embarrassed to say, I've left these sections of the bed get overgrown. As soon as I have a bit of time, I will be cleaning out this mess, and likewise the old corn crop that was planted here, and I will be looking at planting broad beans in both these locations. And then I've got a few fruit still left over on my persimmon tree. I had a total of 6 fruit. I've harvested 3, and I've still got 3 left over, but I will harvest those this weekend. This has been a great plant, but the only issue is I've got my neighbour's mulberry tree, which I am competing with. So look, it does all right considering, and the neighbours tend to cut that tree back a lot, so that's quite fine. And then as I move across this year, I've been aiming to produce all my own compost on site. So with the help of a contact who has horses stabled at their place, I collect all their stable waste and I compost it along with all the chicken run waste that I collect. So this is a new batch that I'm just forming up in a compost pile. But if I come over here, this patch is my patch that I am composting at the moment. And this compost pile consists of all the chicken manure chicken run waste, horse manure, lawn clippings, coffee grounds from the local coffee shop, and just bits and pieces. So I need to turn this over. This has been composting now for about 3 weeks and it's cooled down a fair bit, so I'm going to have to mix it over. But besides that, I will expect to be able to use this in another 2 months' time. I will hot compost the whole lot. Should be able to use it in about 2 months' time. So as I'm now moving into late autumn and almost the start of winter, I'm actually thinking about moving more into my cool season crops. So a lot of my older summer veggies, my eggplants, my jalapenos, I will be retiring them for the season. What I am actually looking at trying to do now is I've harvested my first round of brassicas and I'm looking at trying to start a second round. So I will be starting a second round of cabbage, a fourth round for that matter of cauliflower, some more broccoli and some more lettuce. And I'll be planting them out in 2 to 3 weeks. And in that stage, most of my current crop will be harvested and will be taken out. I'm also looking at starting my broad bean patches. I'm actually going to be planting broad beans where I had my eggplants, but I'm also looking at starting to plant broad beans out in the southern section of my garden because in the past I've had a lot of good experience planting them there, and they're the only crop that I can find that they can grow quite well. And as I move into late May, early June, I will start thinking about my spring season. Yeah, I know it's a bit early, but I do like to start thinking about what I'm going to be planting for the new season. I would look at start buying seeds to suit. So I'll be looking at new varieties of capsicums, new varieties of tomatoes and cucumbers. That's still a bit early in the piece, but all in all, looking forward to growing in the cooler months. And I hope you have success in your garden, and hope you stay up to date with my growing season as I move through from autumn into winter. Thanks a lot for joining me.